The Gemini by A.K. McRory. Chapter 1. The Last Day. Korran Coltrane was looking over his luggage. He was going away for a long time, considering that he had only been away from home a couple of times in his life. As he put his hands through his dark brown hair, he knew that there was little time to get any more things for his new living quarters at the Trinity. That's what the students called it. He had been more with magic and therefore had to go to a special university to be trained on how to use it properly, and get an education that mattered. The regiment that they had was legendary, to say the least. His grandfather still had nightmares about the healing herbs final, and that was over 70 years ago. His parents had met up there. Not that they had a choice but to marry, due to that, unlike the real world, the mystical world has assigned marriages, and that time for Corey wasn't that far away. It was the beginning of the next year, when he'd find out that what the elders had decided on who he'd be better with. Unlike the real world, the elders would take some things that you can dictate into an account, but for the most part, you didn't get what you wanted. They tried to use the mystical way of, in a sense, soul, trying to find the best match for you. In the past 20 years, they have started using pieces of approved technology to help them. Corey wasn't his full first name. He was given the name Korran, but just about everyone except for a very few people called him that. He had gotten used to it while he was in high school, which he had graduated only 2 months prior. When he looked at his room, that was mostly packed up and ready to go to the Trinity. The problem was that his high school friends were going to university all around the region, and they weren't going to leave for another fortnight. Orientation at the Trinity was done 4 days before classes started for first-year students, while the rest of the students, unless they were asked to help with orientation, which would give them some points for later on. Corey was sitting down in his bedroom, which wasn't much due to that they weren't originally going to have a sixth child. They had 5 boys, but his mother wanted a girl. Unfortunately, it turned out to be him. Unlike his brothers, who had all the stylish Coltrane black hair, his hair was dark brown, which for the first time was like his mother's and not like his father's. He didn't have the masculine bodies like they did. He was still manly, just not ripped. He was the average male body with good twitch muscles. His brothers had been taught karate due to their body types. In the community, it was important to be fit as well, due to that it had benefited the magic. He seen his soccer uniform for Lake City High School that he had worn, the same number 26 for 3 of the 4 years of high school. He was on the golf team as well, but nothing serious came from that. When you look at his brothers, sure, he was the baby of the family, and probably shouldn't amount to much. He did his level best to change that. Corey had been using magic since the age of 7. His mother had trained him due to that they shared nearly the same matrix. He had found her companion only a year later, in which the sprite would hide his hair a bit when the other 5 brothers couldn't detect it. He scared his brothers to how adept he was with spells and skills. He was a prodigy, but he didn't show it whatsoever. Due to that, he didn't want to have to prove how good he was. His brother Paul was trying to catch up to him even now. Corey had eclipsed Paul only 2 years ago when it came to the number of spells, and when he broke through Tier 3 spells. Paul was scared due to that Corey, besides his brother John and Lee, had those type of spells available to him. Corey had strengthened up his magic and focused on the martial arts. After spending 2 years with a martial arts master who taught them nearly everything that they knew in martial arts. When it came to girls, that was entirely a different matter. His brothers could pick up some beauties. He wasn't that lucky due to that they had the bodies and faces, while he, on the other hand, was above average, but he didn't get the girls. While they were switching girls practically every month, he didn't remember much of the 2 older brothers to see if it was the same way, since they were so far apart. His brother John Coltrane was 32 years old as he was 19, and didn't have much to deal with Corey during the years since he graduated, when he was 5 years old, and Edward graduated when he was 8 years old, and so forth. The only brothers that he remembered were Lee and Paul. With Paul, it was just more than 3 years apart. Their father seemed disappointed due to how Corey looked. The girls weren't up to what he had seen with his brothers. While they had dated 60 to 70 girls, Corey only had had 10. They were swapping girls every 4 to 6 weeks from what he had heard, but Corey's relationships would last longer, say about 3 to 4 months. The school car that he got to use was a 1983 Austin Maestro. All of the brothers had to drive it. The bet that his father had was that it would go through all 6 kids without breaking down. His uncle said that it wouldn't go through all of that. This was one of the main reasons why Corey couldn't get any suitable women in his opinion, and that was due to his car was crap. Only a few weeks ago, when his most recent girlfriend, Saifeng Xiao, who was good looking and decent body, may not be excellent when it came to certain things. She was there for the senior prom and looked smashing in her blue Chinese dress. Didn't like what she called it, a piece of shit. Now, it didn't make it to the senior dance. His father had to pay upon his bet, which no one knew about. The question you may be asking yourself is, if we have access to magic, why can't we simply use it? There is a multitude of reasons, and mainly for your protection. First off, using magic outside of the house or in a school environment is limited, unless it is considered low-tiered spells, and easily explained to normal people, along with the skill to teleport, which requires a license to do. Many of what couldn't be explained could be dangerous. Now, you could say that coming from a middle-class family, you couldn't spell a car from a 1983 Austin Maestro to, let's say, a 2010 BMW 5 Series, due to that it isn't in your family's price range. His brother Paul did morph his car from a 1983 Austin Maestro into a 1993 Ford Escort. It's a gaudy car, but it's of the same size as the car that he was morphing it into. He looked at the calendar. It was August 12, 2010. He had just turned 19 years old, and he didn't have a car to use, due to that his father had said that there was no repairing it due to the parts weren't available for it. He did get to drive a 2003 Toyota Corolla that they had to the prom. His father couldn't afford a new car for Corey right now, due to Paul's expenses for school that Corey was about to start had gone up due to that he had hit his 3rd year. Corey's expenses were reasonable. The uncle that seen that he didn't have a ride was going to help him out, due to that he had just come across a vehicle in his travels that could help him out. It was a newer car. It wasn't going to be brand new, but his uncle loved his foreign cars, and he was looking at trading in his 2005 Audi S4 that he had. Corey was hoping that he was just going to hand it down to him. Of course, his uncle had his eyes on the new BMW M3 series that was coming up. He had just hoped that he wasn't being driven to the Trinity by his parents. That'd be embarrassing as hell. "Corey, your uncle's here," she yelled. He knew that tomorrow he had about 6.5-hour drive to the school that he'd be calling home for the next 4 to perhaps 7 years. The Trinity was unlike most universities. They didn't take money directly due to them being a university like the Trinity would be way out of the price range of most mystical families. What they took was next to nothing. Besides the kids' expenses for a lot of things that they had to buy, there was no charge for the room. The budget meal plans were, of course, set up by the parents, and the student had to use his cash card wisely throughout the weeks. The PX card that would be in his room would be every week would get about $70 a week, and could build up if he didn't use it all at once. Presently he was on the silver meal plan, which would be on his identification card. "I'll be right down," he said. His parents lived in a 4-bedroom house on the east side of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. This was due to that not all the kids were under the roof at any time. The most it had was 4 of the boys. Corey was hoping for something that didn't look like it'd barely get him there. He so desperately wanted to make the right impression on at least those that he'd see every day. His dating life had to change. He knew that at the beginning of next year that he'd be assigned a mate from his class. "There you are, Corey. I cannot be here for long due to that trying to get your cousin Rick out of the doldrums because he doesn't like who he was assigned to as a mate," he continues. "The sad thing is that people like our family don't get the best when it comes to mates, unfortunately." He still has the swimsuit model on the mind. You cannot blame Rick on that one. He's one of the better looking boys in school and expects to have a decent mate, but her figure isn't going to wow anyone. Hell, you just have to wonder what the hell were they thinking. She's nowhere near what he usually dated, and doesn't come from the best of families, and therefore the resource gain isn't going to be outstanding. They may assign mates, but besides being a female, she doesn't offer a lot. Is he going to take the challenge? Corey's mother asks. It may be true that she doesn't offer much, but what could be out there for him due to that there isn't anyone that would make it worth it, his uncle countered. Probably in his view, marrying a normal would be better than the stick that he got, his mother said. "Can I see the car that I'm going to drive to the Trinity, or am I going to be subjected to Rex Forlorn Hope soap opera again?" Corey responds. His uncle smiles to that. Corey wasn't that far away from getting his and could discuss this for hours on end. Due to that back in the day, this decision wasn't made until just after it began the 3rd year. By that time you had your feet underneath you. However, in 1995, due to that the influx of marriages by the old system wasn't ending up in the best of conditions for the small population of mystics out there. Drastic measures were taken up. The problem was that the old system had numerous loopholes for the families and the individuals that this affected. When the population was seriously leaning towards too many males in the mix, for every 1.6 males there was 1 female. It didn't help that the Coltranes had 6 boys either. There was something about the time that he was born that was going to convert 1 or not 2 of them into girls. Due to that, the population needed to be balanced, so everyone would get a mate that went through things that they did. With Corey, it was damn close that in the womb that they were going to force him to be a girl before being born. If it wasn't for the new minister being elected, it would have happened. As well for the kids that were ages 6 and under, which would have been affected Paul as well. "Corey, this car is not a Ferrari 575, but it'll get you there. Your father lost the bet, but you lost the vehicle to get you to your next stage of life, and right now he cannot get you one. I felt kind of bad for you. So I went into my collection to see what would fit you, who you are. You need a car that says you've arrived. It's a 2003 Alfa Romeo 156 with the 2.5-liter V6 engine, not the 3.2. This car has less than 30,000 miles on it. It's been kept in good condition, and I put a notebook with who to have it maintained by when you are there," he said. 慢慢地被卸载，慢慢互相传染。哦嘿哦。在哪？